right. Thanks so much, Jim, for that great session. And now we have Ali Haeri, Senior Vice President of Marketing at Mountain, our sponsor of this virtual forum here with us. And me as well. I am the Senior Editor at Custom within Digiday Media. So hi, thank you again, Ali, for being here with us. While it's no surprise to many of us that more advertisers are investing in TV advertising, right? Specifically CTV, as we've been covering this quite a bit across Digiday. What is interesting is where those budgets are coming from, right? So, based on a recent survey that Digiday and Mountain conducted, we saw that about one quarter of our brand and agency respondents now have a dedicated CTV budget, and that's going to go up to about 30% next year. But everyone else so far is shifting budget from other channels to support those CTV strategies. And the top three channels that they're pulling from are social media by quite a significant margin. That's coming in at about 66%, followed by email marketing at 43, and then paid search at 32. So I'm curious, why do you think such a large portion of brands and agencies are moving budgets away from social media into CTV? And what do you think that indicates about shifting priorities and tactics?
Happy to be here, by the way. Thank you. Thank you so much for the time. Yeah, the first thing that's most interesting to me as I'm hearing all of that is um, it's kind of it's counterintuitive in the sense that I think a lot of people assume that CTV budgets are carved out of linear TV advertising. In a way, it makes sense because we've kind of seen viewership cross the chasm from linear TV to streaming TV, and so you would think it's the same marketers that are going to be managing streaming TV advertising as they did with linear. But there's a couple of clues in what you kind of mentioned. First is that this is a performance marketing channel, and it's kind of owned by a different part of the house, and we've encountered that. We've seen that feedback. We've heard it from our own sales team, where they're not selling into the like sort of traditional TV media buyers inside the agency or on the brand side, but rather it's the people who are managing performance marketing. So it's a great clue in terms of how CTV is being perceived these days. Um, another sort of just thought related to this too, is that there's a world where CTV and social coexist. They're really, even though the budget is being carved out from one, we would never sort of recommend to an advertiser to abandon a social platform for connected television. Really, it's just kind of what it's becoming is sort of the third pillar to, a marketing sort of mix for a performance marketer: paid search, paid social, and connected television. One thing that's been interesting for us to kind of observe of advertisers who have done exactly what you've been mentioning, which is really rapidly ramping up the spend of CTV, is how it's sort of creating a halo effect back and affecting back to the social and paid search channels. And so we've done this measurement with some of our other advertisers who've done this, where after they've been running CTV, they start seeing a lift on their branded search campaigns and also on their paid social campaigns. And so I don't know if we'll get into sort of measurement in this conversation, but having a platform that allows you to sort of measure the impact of TV is very important because it's having a lot of sort of downstream impact on other channels. And so I guess in a really kind of convoluted way, it certainly makes sense that there's a carve out of budget coming from paid social, but it's not to say that paid social is going away or any less important. Really, it's more so just making room for what's very quickly becoming an incredibly viable third pillar to the classic channels that we all use.
That makes sense. Right. And based also on that recent survey that we mentioned, about half, a little more than half, 55% of brands and agencies said that they're using CTV to increase brand awareness, right? Which is, something we're used to seeing. But those using it for improved ad relevance and precise audience targeting were, nearly tied at 40%, which is a big chunk. So while brand awareness has usually been the standard play within the TV space, it's definitely clear that performance is progressing, especially as more advertisers see the results of attaching consumer action to their CTV campaigns. So, with this in mind, what are some of the strategies that you're seeing advertisers use to adjust toward more performance plays? And how are you seeing them strategize for 2024 so far?
Two things come to mind. The first one is if we're really orienting ourselves around thinking of connected television as a performance marketing channel, a hallmark of a performance marketing channel is evergreen campaigns. People don't tinker with their paid search and paid social channels so much that they're like just like running like 2 week flights and then pausing and then doing something else. They always keep them on. Your paid search is always on. And so the first thing would be to kind of commit to connected television in that sort of way, where you're constantly keeping it on. And there's a lot of data that kind of backs this up. One thing that we've kind of observed through analysis is, uh, you'll certainly feel performance and see volume of traffic relatively quickly, but really for a platform to kind of hit its stride, 3 months in, we start seeing people really kind of still increasing performance. The media buying engine is sort of getting better, and about 3 months in, you really hit your stride. And so really do have to like kind of commit yourself to the channel too. You can't be trigger happy and like pause things. And so one is just evergreen campaigns and really commit to the channel the way you do with paid search and paid social, and it'll pay off. Certainly you'll just the performance will increase. And there's other things that you could do specifically in terms of the creative that you upload to kind of to increase the performance of that. Just to dig into that for just a moment, when you're dealing with a platform like Mountains, where a lot of the complicated media buying is sort of abstracted away because there's an AI technology that's doing all the media buying around the clock for you. So you don't need to kind of twist the knobs 24/7. Really, what's left, the biggest optimization that's left for you to do is choosing audiences and choosing creative. And this directly kind of relates to the question that you're asking in terms of what you can do from a performance standpoint to really kind of influence things positively. Creative is a fascinating one because you can do or say literally anything in your ad, and it could be perceived in different ways. And so um, turning over your creative frequently, I'd say monthly, testing out a variety of creative, testing out different messaging, all of this will influence your performance, certainly. And I think a lot of that is obvious. I don't need to kind of like belabor that point. But with connected TV, considering the ad experience of being on a couch, can't skip the ad, you really want to make it as compelling as possible. This brings me to the other big kind of lever to pull here to influence performance, which is audience targeting. And I believe you mentioned that just a little bit. Um, you know, there you the difference between connected TV advertising versus linear TV advertising most obviously is the targeting of the ads. In the case of linear, you're targeting by network or TV show, but you're targeting the entire viewership of both. Whereas in connected television, this is no different than social. It's kind of like interest based, affinity based, in market based audiences. That's a much higher fidelity of targeting in the case of connected television. And that's really going to that's going to really have huge implications on the performance of your campaigns. And so, if you've done TV advertising the old way, this is certainly going to be a learning process for you because, again, you're used to having to create really broad messaging that you can use for this campaign. And maybe it costs so much to create this creative. You're going to need to use it on other networks and other shows. So your messaging just needs to get broader and broader, and it eventually starts losing its meaning. In the case of programmatic and audience targeting, it's kind of the opposite. You can get as narrow as you want with the target audience, and so there's tons of value in doing that. It's just a matter of if you have the resources and the will to create creative that kind of serves that like sort of granular audience. Um, but certainly that's going to have the biggest impact. And it's kind of a slam dunk. There's tens of thousands of audience segments out there, and if you're hitting someone who's in market for the product that you sell, I mean, you're really setting yourself up for a lot of success there. But you got to be judicious about the audiences that you choose. Separate the campaigns and target different audiences. If you have different sort of personas that you're targeting, tailor your creative to both. So I'd say those are the two big components that contribute to performance success.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that kind of dives into my next question a bit, on performance or measurement rather, which you did kind of mention a little bit earlier. So when we asked our survey respondents what steps they're taking to measure the performance of their CTV ads more effectively, the top choice by far is partnering with a third party tech vendor at 59%. So I'm curious, what is the best way to incorporate metrics from third party vendors into CTV campaigns so that advertisers can, effectively build off of whatever their existing capabilities are?
So we're in a place in the maturity of CTV where most platforms can support some third-party tags for the sake of accountability to understand where the placements are happening. I think some metrics are more nuanced in the case of CTV compared to what you see in, say, display. For example, like viewability. You're going to have this is like a classic vanity metric for CTV. All CTV platforms are going to have really high viewability rates because they're non-skippable ads. And so like the video completion rate on Mountain is like 98 point something percent. And that's not because Mountain is special. That's just because no one wants to, the only way you're going to avoid the ad is by stop watching the show. And no one's going to do that. And so the work of the measurement providers in the case of CTV is going to be a little bit different. So you got to understand the nuances of measuring TV in that sort of way. So yeah, I mean, it makes sense, and just a couple of points on this. We integrate with Google Analytics directly. And I think that's important. Again, back to that point of just kind of viewing this channel and perceiving it as a performance marketing channel. It's nice to have this data flow through to the same source of truth that you're using to kind of grade the work of all of the other performance marketing channels that you're using, and sort of stack up the source mediums of all of these different channels side by side and kind of really accurately see the quality of the traffic and quantity of the traffic that they're driving to your website. So that's something that we do personally. We run CTV campaigns to promote Mountain, and we're measuring it all in Google Analytics. So that certainly makes sense. One thought that I want to kind of put in people's minds as they're thinking about measurement is back to the platform that you're using to do the advertising. So certainly makes sense to get the third-party tags up and running and analyze that data. Absolutely. One important consideration, though, is fundamentally, what is the sort of universe in which the ad platform that you're using is serving ads on? And so is there a lot of obscure TV inventory that this platform is going to be serving on? We certainly have seen a lot of like junk CTV inventory that exists out there. And the problem with that is maybe obvious, is that that's not traffic that's really going to convert for you. And with Mountain, we have this whole concept of living room quality where it's just the biggest and best TV networks, ABC, NBC, CNN, MTV, Peacock. It's not a marketing thing. It's not to be able to say, hey, look at all these cool networks. This is totally rooted in real data. What we kind of learned over the course of kind of developing this platform was in the beginning, we would serve inventory across everything. But what we quickly realized was that the conversions only happen on the premium networks. They don't really happen when someone is served an ad on something really obscure. Also, those really obscure channels are far more susceptible to fraud. And so it's not marketing spin when you hear a platform like Mountain talk about serve your ads on these really premier networks. It sort of makes sense. And this is an opportunity where, just to seem impartial, I'll give a shout out to like Hulu. Hulu is a walled garden, but within those walls, you have really high quality, content. And so ads being served within Hulu, it would make sense that that would be performant because that's just great content that they have as well. So why am I mentioning this in the context of measurement? It makes sense that the platform that you're using is already constraining itself to high quality inventory. Still measure it, absolutely. It's not to say don't, but your starting point should be a platform that's kind of constrained to high quality inventory and then take it from there.
That makes sense. Wonderful. And then an interesting stat that I found is of the 22% of respondents who said that they haven't yet added CTV to their mix, nearly half of those said it was due to ad pricing being, too expensive, which is something we've heard before. But while CPMs in general haven't been high enough to really be considered prohibitive lately by most, they are causing a lot of advertisers to continue to reevaluate how much they're investing in the channel. So I was wondering what suggestions you have in the way of strategies that advertisers can employ to begin adding CTV to their mix in a way that's, manageable cost wise, but that still provides them with, a decent return.
This is another instance where considering the platform is pretty important to the success from a cost standpoint. If you kind of buy CTV inventory off the street, if you're kind of doing open market pricing, it's going to be expensive. That's not something that I think a lot of people would disagree with. So using a platform, I'm trying to not make this sound like salesy for Mountain, but I think I kind of have to make this point though. Using a platform that has direct relationships with publishers is absolutely to the benefit of advertisers because Joe advertiser is not going to have the relationships and also the buying power that a platform like Mountain cumulatively will to be able to negotiate better CPMs directly with publishers. Just not going to have those resources. And so if you've ever wondered why someone would choose to work through a platform like Mountain, as opposed to just trying to buy the media for themselves without the benefit of any direct relationships with publishers, it's just going to be really, really expensive to try to do that on your own. And that's not even considering all the bells and whistles that you're not getting by just doing everything manually. So making sure that you can kind of piggyback on these deals that have been made on the platform side can hugely benefit you in terms of pretty immediately getting a look at premium inventory that by the time the waterfall hits you on the open market, you just won't get. And knowing that premium inventory is what's really performant in the case of CTV, that's a huge consideration that has huge implications towards costs. The other thing I'd say, practically speaking, is ramp up. CTV, the other kind of crazy counterintuitive aspect of CTV advertising compared to the linear alternative is it's pay as you go. And there isn't this huge lead time that you are probably used to in the case of linear TV advertising. And so you can start with a relatively modest budget and run and see what happens. But again, the pro tip here, whether you use Mountain or any other platform, is you have to commit to it. You can't run it for like 2 weeks and then just shut it off and grade its work that way. You really got to commit to it for a couple of months for it to hit its stride, and then it'll for most people, it'll just kind of be good enough where you just won't want to turn it off. And in case, and in fact, you'll actually want to increase the budget. So having that courage to kind of like stick it out in the beginning, if it's an entirely new channel to you and you've never run TV advertising before, that's critical. And again, when the platform hits its efficiency, say about 3 months in, that is huge return on ad spend implications for the advertiser. So it ultimately serves you well from a cost standpoint to do exactly that.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's a great point. You can't can't try something for just a couple of weeks and expect, you know, amazing results. It's not enough time. So that's perfect. And then I think my last question for you is, you know, has to do with we're going back to an older survey that we did with you guys. So back in 2021, um, inventory fragmentation was, the number one challenge, as we know. But interestingly enough, this year it's actually at the bottom of our list of challenges, only at 26% of brands and agencies saying that it's a challenge. So instead, brand safety and reaching relevant audiences were tied for the number one challenge. And then it was followed by cost and inconsistent measurement, as well as ad fraud, tying for third. So I'm curious, have you seen CTV advertisers begin to adjust their strategies in light of the shift in challenges, or do you anticipate seeing more changes, next year instead?
I think the brand safety piece is a big topic that makes a lot of sense, and that checks out. That's something that we hear a lot as well, and that kind of goes back to that whole thread previously about what is the total universe of inventory of the CTV provider that you're using. That's going to have huge implications on brand safety. So kind of keeping that as a big consideration, that's critical. And again, the sort of inadvertent benefit of all of that is it's that same premium inventory that will help you avoid brand safety issues that also helps you generate more site visits and conversions. Those are the publishers that are going to be most useful in terms of making a CTV campaign perform. So there's a dual benefit to just kind of using platforms that constrain inventory to exactly that. On the audience piece, that certainly makes sense. Um, just to go a little bit further on audience and to give people some ideas in terms of what it can do, back to this point that I keep belaboring related to CTV being a performance marketing channel. Um, uh, in the same manner that you target audiences, we already talked about what's called prospecting audiences, right? Like these in-market or affinity-based audiences. But the other types of audience targeting that you're used to doing on other channels is also available on TV. And with Mountain, people can do CRM-based campaigns where it's matched audiences. You can show up with your loyalty program members or your full CRM or your ABM campaign if you're a B2B marketer, upload those lists and make those users the targets for your TV campaigns. Or you could just do straight up site-based retargeting because there's a pixel that you put on your website. And just as you see with retargeting campaigns on any other channel, it goes the same with CTV as well. Those are going to be the most high performing campaigns that you're going to be running, TV retargeting. And also what happens is it turns out to just be a really unique end user experience as well, for someone to visit your website and then turn on their TV that evening and see ads for that same brand. It just creates a really unique user experience as well. So there's a lot of kind of fringe benefits to a lot of the core considerations that these marketers have. There's a lot of fringe benefits that kind of come along with those as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Allie, for your time today. It's always wonderful speaking with you. And thanks again to Mountain for sponsoring this virtual forum today. And I'm going to pass it off to Kale Wyson, editor in chief of Modern Retail, for the next session. Thank you again, Allie.
Thank you.